Today we're going to be talking about Beam. Beam is a cryptocurrency that, along with its evil twin, Grin, were all the hype on social media just a few months ago. Now they are not talked about so much. But Beam and its underlying technology, Mimblewimble, are actually incredibly interesting and well worth taking note of, especially when other people aren't talking about them very much. So before I break down just what Beam and the Mimblewimble technology are, the question of course arises, why is privacy technology important anyway? I have Bitcoin. It's private enough, right? Well, that's a funny story about that because Bitcoin actually exposes a lot of information, particularly who sent what to who and how much was sent. Now, assuming that we never find out who either party in this situation is, then no big deal, right? But it is not super hard, especially for authorities, to see who is sending what to who, and of course, once someone, even if that someone is a friendly person, knows your Bitcoin address, they can just look in and see all of your account activity forever thereafter. And they know it's you because you told them it's you. Whereas with Beam and the underlying technology in Mimblewimble, there are no addresses. Yes, you heard that right. There are no addresses. Which is kind of crazy. Or other private information. None of that stuff is stored on the blockchain. There is no information whatsoever about either the sender or the receiver of any given transaction. None of that stuff is stored in the blockchain. Now, this is achieved in part by something called blinding factors, which are used to connect the two participants of any given transaction. The blinding factor is shared between the two parties wishing to transact, and no one except for these two participants in that transaction have access to that. The blinding factor can be used to prove ownership of the values that were sent. Now, in a break from usual cryptocurrency transactions as well, the sender and the receiver both participate in creating the transaction. So, transactions are not simply one way, at least not at the moment, like with other cryptocurrencies. Another key piece of Beam is a bit of technology called the Peterson commitment. Great name, guys. In which nodes take care of the encrypted maths, particularly in terms of who has what between the senders and the receivers, and that the sum of all inputs minus the sum of all outputs on the blockchain is 0 in order to validate the chain. Now, in this system, network verifiers can confirm that their transactions are real, and of course that no cryptocurrency was created out of thin air. So instead of storing the full transaction history as we do with Bitcoin, a Beam node only needs to store the current UTXO state. In this situation, only the headers of the previous blocks are required to confirm the validity of transactions as they hold the validity of the transaction before it. Which brings us to the cut-through, which is one of the other core concepts in Mimblewimble. Now, the cut-through gives us high scalability due to really compacting the blockchain size. Cut-through feature makes it so that Beam is many times lighter than other blockchains, with estimates that it will, assuming of course the same size of the Bitcoin blockchain as it is kind of now, as an example, be as much as 66 to 90% lighter as a blockchain. Of course, that does actually remain to be proven in, 10 years' time. The main idea with Beam is to give you complete control of your privacy. You actually get to decide what information you share. All transactions are private by default, and the system operates on a confidentiality without penalty basis. For example, with Zcash, where you need to actually spend extra resources and extra time to make a private transaction. It's different with Beam. So in Beam, confidential transactions do not result in a heavier blockchain, and they avoid that additional computational requirement to make a confidential transaction that you see, for example, on Zcash. Now, Beam will initially support around 17 transactions per second, which, let's be fair, that's not really super awesome. But the idea of Beam is not to be a transactional, day-to-day cryptocurrency, although solutions such as Lightning or even Thunderella are being explored in order to provide layer 2 scaling solutions. But until that time, the value proposition of Beam is as a store of value. Beam has no pre-mine, there was no ICO, and it is backed by a treasury system and is establishing a non-profit foundation to help govern the protocol after the launch of the mainnet. Now, the foundation oversees and funds development as well, of course, as seeking investors and development partners. We can already see the foundation paying dividends as Beam and Litecoin Foundation are actually teaming up in order to cooperate on the advancement of privacy technology and, of course, exploring implementing Mimblewimble on Litecoin. In particular, the two teams are exploring adding privacy and fungibility to Litecoin by allowing for on-chain conversion of regular Litecoin into a Mimblewimble variant of Litecoin, and of course vice versa, which is pretty cool. The core team and Beam Development Limited are not planning to govern Beam forever. Instead, they're actually opening up the code, they are inviting in open source developers, and they are setting up the non-profit foundation to run things in the future, which of course will be funded by the treasury. Now, the treasury works as follows. During the first 5 years of Beam's existence, 20% of all newly generated coins will automatically go to the treasury. This 20% will go to the initial investors, to the core team and advisors, and the nonprofit Beam Foundation. Now, there will of course be some people that dislike this model, particularly the payouts for the first 5 years to the team and to the investors, but the treasury setup for the continued development of Beam, I think, is actually a very smart and clever move and should provide a robust ecosystem, or guarantee a robust ecosystem in the future. The real question, of course, will be, as much like with Zcash, is that after this block reward is phased out in 5 years, how will the foundation continue to actually generate the needed funds in order to ensure that developers are working on Beam to always stay ahead in the privacy game? Now, even though I'm only discussing Beam in this video, Grin shares many of the same features that Beam does. And look, I'm not going to go into breaking down every single detail of how these two cryptocurrencies are different, but at a kind of a high level, the philosophy behind them is certainly different, as Grin went, open source from day one and didn't create an official foundation. Instead, they're relying on the community to fund Grin, and they're also relying on the community to develop Grin. But Beam and Grin are working together when and where it is relevant for them to further the Mimblewimble technology. Now, aside from those kind of differences, Beam primarily wants to be a confidential store of value, while Grin would prefer to be a medium of exchange. And Grin has an infinite supply, while Beam has a fixed supply, which is capped at 263 million, with a Bitcoin-like deflationary mining scheme that halves block rewards over time. The block reward for the first year is 80 Beam per block. This will have approximately every 4 years until the 133rd year, when emission stops. Although both Grin and Beam are Mimblewimble coins, as we can see, they're actually taking different approaches to how they're building this technology and to the philosophies that are guiding them. Beam at this stage is still very much in its early development cycle. Even though the mainnet is currently live, the roadmap for 2019 is actually a very ambitious one, including a range of things like a proof of work algorithm change, one-sided payments, which I think is a very important step for Beam moving forward, multi-signature support, the Lightning Network, a ghost DAG proof of concept, and much more besides that. And that, to be fair, is a lot of stuff to develop, and they have their work cut out for them. You can add in that they're currently looking at atomic swaps. Also, the hardware wallet integration is coming here in the near future. The team is looking at the treasury, so that should be happening pretty soon. With all that taken into consideration, you can realize these guys have got their work cut out for them, but it is a very ambitious team, and they do want to deliver a lot of technology. And it'll certainly be fascinating to see just how this technology actually develops over the next couple of years. I feel like either of the Mimblewimble coins, but especially for me, Beam, could actually be a really interesting investment. Just look at how undervalued these coins are compared to the other privacy coins that actually lead their respective tech packs. This, of course, being Zcash with ZK Snarks with a market cap of almost $400 million. And then, of course, we have Monero with the ring signatures and a market cap of just over $1 billion. Compare that to Grin, which is at $20 million currently, or Beam, which is at $9 million market cap currently. I got myself a bag of Beam, and there could be a lot of upside on this one. Of course, not financial advice, guys, just a dude giving his 2 Satoshis about random cryptocurrencies on the internet. But I find them to be interesting. I think the challenge, though, for a lot of these coins, though, will be as the bigger projects actually implement their technology. For example, Ethereum with ZK Snarks, how relevant will Zcash be in that situation? Or Litecoin with Mimblewimble, why would you need Beam in that situation? Those are tough questions to answer. Can the original tech coin actually maintain its market share and relevance in those situations? Time will tell, I suppose. Also, there's a link down below to an article for anyone who's kind of interested in a more detailed breakdown on how Zcash and Monero and Beam are actually technically different from each other. So if you're interested, you can, of course, go ahead and check that out. Anyway, I would love to know your thoughts on Beam and Mimblewimble compared to the other privacy technologies. Do you think that this has a lot of promise? Do you think that Mimblewimble will be a really exciting privacy tech in the future, that it's going to be one of the new big things, even though not a lot of people are talking about it these days? Let me know about it down below in the comment section. Also, if you are new around here, make sure to check out Cryptocurrency Explains. It's a free 5-hour course designed for beginners. Great value for anyone who's been into crypto for a while. You can find it at thecryptolark.org, playlist just here, or over on Udemy. If you did enjoy today's video, leave a thumbs up on it. You can also subscribe to the channel if you are new around here. Long live the blockchain. Peace out till next time.